My lords, today we are going to address the meaning of utopia and hope to find it by exploring the governments within our galaxy. I hope this is a good contrast to last week's report on dystopia, although I will say, I think it's far more difficult to pick out the utopian governments than the dystopian ones, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on the matter. The concept of utopia focuses on, among other things, equality in categories such as economics, government, and justice. Ideally, there is a fair distribution of resource, and the law is both just, but importantly, followed by all of its citizens, from the lowest classes to the highest classes. There are arguments that the idea of a utopia is inherently contradictory, because societies are not homogeneous. Their members have desires that will conflict, and therefore cannot simultaneously be satisfied. Nevertheless, several such empires have attempted to make it so, and I shall delve into these, categorizing them by ascension type: synth, cyber, bio, and megacorp, but unlike the report on dystopia, I'll also touch on gestalts. We begin with the synthetics and democratic transference. An empire with a democratic transference government affords an unprecedented freedom of movement from one synthesized body to another, and is ready to deal with the additional cost that this accrues. It feels like in this society one may become whoever or perhaps whatever they wish, and all paid at the expense of somebody else, in this case the government. It is important to note that this government type is only available to synthetic empires who've gone down the physical route, although despite this they are still synthetic and have the capacity to upload and download them into different bodies, in this case, as they wish. This government type typically sees a larger edict fund capacity, increased resettlement chance, and increases in specialist output, but also increases in upkeep and reduced ethics attraction. This is perhaps an odd example to begin with. Is it a utopia? Well, the citizens are clearly afforded sensibilities that are rare throughout the galaxy, and I think it's fair to say, utopia isn't inherently free. It certainly has a price, which is following the rules that make it possible. The ability to change bodies on a whim does not make this society a utopia. Comfort, safety, and opportunity also need to exist in abundance, and yet personal freedoms must, to a point, remain constrained enough by an unwavering expectation, a form of social contract, if you like. The harmony and perfection of any society is, at the end of the day, maintained not by chance but by the disciplined compliance of its citizens. Without this, there can be no utopia at all. If, for example, a citizen wanted to move to a body that was, say, 15 feet high, and therefore perhaps a hazard to other citizens, does that mean that they can no longer live in utopia? It's an interesting point to raise. Let's move on and continue to explore the concept, this time with democratic surrogacy. This is defined as replacing soldiers with sophisticated, remotely operated surrogates lessens the impact of war on the populace. Ships can also be built slimmer, as the crew no longer requires quarters or cockpits. Clearly, this is a net positive to any society. They will in theory no longer lose any of the population to war. Of course, this alone does not a utopia make. What this translates to in reality is some marvellous ship-related bonuses, namely increased build speed and sublight speed, and they also receive the same edict fund and government ethic changes as democratic transference. I think it's important to note here that despite the synthetics having multiple governments that I believe to be dystopian, oligarchic override is a clear example, there does not appear to be a standout utopian example. Maybe synthetics can never truly operate as a utopia. Maybe they can, and it's just not ingrained in their government. But nevertheless, utopia is something the galaxy must fight for. Indeed, humanity must fight for, and you can do just that with today's sponsor. Stardock Entertainment is bringing us Ashes of the Singularity 2, a real-time strategy game. Control the forces of Earth, the mechanical AI substrate, or the enigmatic post-human coalition as you battle across the solar system in single-player, cooperative, or competitive multiplayer. I will personally be playing as the UEC, the United Earth Congress, battling to retake Earth from rebellious AIs and the post-human zealots, unbound by any law or limit. Ashes of the Singularity 2 is available to wishlist on Steam, and I would highly encourage you to do so by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comment. With that, we'll move on to the cybernetic governments, starting with democratic concurrency. In this society, highly advanced neurosecurity protocols allow citizens to vote on policy decisions in real time, directly. This results in reduced empire size from POPs, reduced leader costs, increases to unity output, and specialist output. And furthermore, cybernetic POPs are very happy about this, as they get a clear and obvious say in their government, an element of control over their lives perhaps. Any non-cybernetic POPs, however, will suffer a happiness penalty if they live under this government, which is somewhat eye-opening, as we can ask the question, can you operate as a utopian government if you don't bring everyone with you? By excluding the non-cybernetic POPs, should this remove this government type from the list? Furthermore, does essentially holding a referendum on every piece of legislation make an empire a utopia? It sort of depends on the citizens and the level of division within said society. If what they are voting on and agreeing on is for the betterment of their society, then it certainly could be a utopia. But I think it depends far more on the citizens than the government in this particular case. Next we have an imperial government, because it seems that utopia doesn't necessarily have to be tied to egalitarian and democratic pillars. At the end of the day, as long as those at the top live under the same rules as everybody else, perhaps utopia can exist. In this case, we're looking at Imperial Chipset. The designated successor of the imperial throne inherits not only the position, but a specialized implant passed through generations. It contains a wealth of priceless knowledge used from their predecessors, imparting all types of wisdom on how to govern. The same technology is used throughout the empire in a lesser form, allowing other individuals to pass on their experiences onwards. Now, when reading this, there is no inherent reason that this government could not operate as a utopia. The imperial leader with their abundant knowledge could certainly lead their people to a beautiful, civilized, and resource-abundant society. Indeed, this government sees bonuses to elite pop output, but people living outside the inner core systems do have a reduced happiness. Perhaps this is because they're missing out on the benefits of the capital worlds. I think it's fair to say that this government isn't inherently utopian or dystopian. I think it instead falls entirely upon its leadership and its people to make that the reality for themselves. But it does make a good discussion point, as does the next and final cybernetic government type, the Imperial Network. The Imperial Network allows the entire population to access whole new avenues of mass entertainment. A massive cyberdome can be built on the capital world to host ferocious cybersports with augmented athletes and broadcast this across multiple worlds. This is not merely sport, but a grand theatre of strength, skill, and technological prowess designed to unite the populace in shared excitement and pride. Now, pride is something we've not yet touched on. Does a utopia require its citizens to show pride and adoration of their own society? I'll let you answer that for me. From a governance perspective, Imperial Network offers increased unity and amenities output via its glorious hyper-gladiators, a job type unique to this government, as its citizens rally behind their champions. Interestingly, this also adds the spectator job, insinuating that somehow people are paid to watch, or perhaps it's just reflecting the revenue of the state that it acquires from holding these games. In any case, everyone appears happy, except maybe with the tiny caveat that people potentially dying in the arena, but we'll gloss over that. So, could this be a utopia? On the surface, the people are entertained, engaged, and proud of their imperial athletes. The empire thrives on cultural cohesion, and its citizens are given constant sources of joy. Beneath it all, however, harmony remains contingent on the citizens' willingness to embrace the system as it is. I assume if one was to deviate from this and reject the spectacle, they might find the state's benevolence far less accommodating. Once again, we find that utopia, in this context, is not the absence of rules, but the promise of comfort and unity in exchange for playing your part in this great game. Before we move on to bio-authorities, I should of course mention our own government and Lord Prime Minister and Supreme Military Commander Sidney Beauclair. We here at the Commonwealth of Man do live in a utopia, unmatched across the galaxy, as long as you're human of course. Moving on now to biologically ascended empires, and we start with the Cordant Multiplicity. This government embraces cloning technology as a testament to equality and progress. Clones stand shoulder to shoulder with natural-born individuals. Their voices are equally valued. The will of the people is enriched by the diversity of every perspective, clone or not. The slight note I will say about this is that how can clones be diverse if they're clones? I'm not sure how much sense that makes. In any case, on paper, this is perhaps as close as one might get to the egalitarian ideal. The biological lottery is rendered irrelevant, and the barriers of status at birth is perhaps dissolved. With the careful management of cloning facilities, the Empire could enjoy a stable and expanding population capable of filling every necessary role that reproduction rates may bring with it. Productivity across the state rises, and therefore the state is able to meet its needs without conscripting unwilling hands. However, the utopian shine does begin to dull somewhat when we consider this unspoken obligation. Cloning at this scale clearly demands regulation, and the regulation demands authority. Every clone is a product of someone, and we assume a state-sanctioned process. Their very existence is tied to the machinery of this governance. While in theory they have the same rights as everyone else, their origin is clearly not free from oversight, because you're making them to work the jobs that perhaps the naturally born don't want to do. In such a society, comfort and opportunity would clearly be readily found, but only so long as you accept the premise that the state will still fundamentally control elements of your life, including the freedoms given. This could certainly be a utopia of abundance and equality, as long as you don't resist the inherent system. This empire will see increases in faction resource output and reductions in empire size and clone leader upkeep. Leaders also get the backup clone trait, meaning if they die, they will be reborn. Biodiverse Liberty comes next. This society upholds the principle that each individual's body is their temple, fully under their own design and control. Within a framework of freedom and unwavering support, citizens are empowered to realise their unique potential, shaping themselves and their futures as they see fit. This appears to be the biological equivalent of a blank canvas. The tools of genetic mastery have been placed in the hand of every citizen, very similar to the synthetic government that we started with. Here, diversity is not simply tolerated, rather it is celebrated, with each modification or personal evolution a testament to individuality. One assumes this empire would have one of the most diverse populations across the entire galaxy. In a similar vein to the synthetic one, this line between personal sovereignty and public safety is going to be constantly walked, and one assumes occasionally crossed. Does this prevent it from becoming a utopia? In many ways, certainly on perhaps a personal level, this could be the best example of a utopia so far. The freedom to decide exactly who and what you are through genetic manipulation. But the harmony of this depends on every citizen respecting the limits that make these freedoms sustainable. Because without the limits, the liberty becomes chaos. It could be a living, breathing paradise, or it could be an absolute hellscape dystopia. It's entirely upon the citizens themselves to make it a utopia for themselves. This government type gives quite fantastic bonuses. Citizens see an increase in job efficiency, happiness, unity, research speed, and the auto-modded pops will switch traits 50% faster. It is actually a really solid government to live under. Phenotypical Autonomy is the purity version of the bio-ascended advanced government type, and it is extremely similar to the mutation one that we just discussed, Biodiverse Liberty. It's defined as bodily self-determination is a right. The state empowers individuals to modify their vessels as they see fit. Limited only by their imagination, their body becomes the ultimate canvas. Now this feels awfully similar to Biodiverse Liberty, so I won't delve into the cultural ramifications, but I will point out that the bonuses it offers feel a lot worse. This government type will provide empires with increases in happiness and leader bonuses, and not much else. I have two more bioascension governments for you, and both are surprisingly imperial. The first is acquired via mutation, Genomic Expansionist, and this is defined as embracing the unpredictable power of random mutation This empire taps into the untold potential, fostering innovations and abilities that traditional methods could not achieve. In the race for dominance, the chaos of mutation becomes their greatest advantage, propelling them towards unrivaled supremacy. This is clearly not the cold precision of a gene splicing in a lab under the hand of a careful geneticist. It is the opposite. Evolution, rather mutation, unshackled. In this government, it appears that the state actively cultivates instability in the genome, allowing nature's roll of the dice to deliver gifts beyond imagination. Although, I guess that the dice could fall unfavourably, and you end up with pain and suffering instead, perhaps. Is it a utopia if citizens live knowing their children may be born with abilities never before seen, or with burdens that must be managed? Probably not, actually. Perhaps this shouldn't be on the list at all. Nevertheless, the empires with this government type do only see positive outcomes, namely increases in research speed, worker job efficiency, and leader experience gain. Biotic Dominion is the last of the biological ascensions to address, and this is linked with the purity path. Championing genetic excellence, this government extends its leaders' lifespan while relentlessly pursuing biotic perfection. Society's prosperity hinges on the survival and propagation of only the finest genes, ensuring a future defined by superiority. The unyielding curation of the genetic pool guarantees progress with longevity and perfection as its ultimate rewards. Clearly, this is not a society that compromises. Every birth, pairing, every genetic modification is weighed against this grand design, and is, I guess, the state's vision of people perfected in form and function. The rewards for compliance here are potentially unmatched. Citizens will enjoy exceptional health, long lives, and a society free from any disease or weakness. But the cost, well, that's written into every law, every policy, every personal decision. The genetic destiny of the individual is not really up to them to decide, and those who fall short of this ideal may find themselves excluded from reproduction or advancement, or even from any participation in civic life at all. But is this a utopia? Well, it could be, for some. Absolutely. As with all utopias, the harmony is built on the rules, but in Biotic Dominion, the rules are reaching into your very being. For those who meet the standard, it's a paradise, longevity and strength. For those who don't, it's a reminder that in the pursuit of perfection, not everyone makes the cut. Elites in this society have the imperial bloodline trait and see increases in lifespan and experience gain. I'm sure for some who live in this world, it is certainly a utopia. Now on to the megacorps. They were perhaps the most generally dystopian of all the government types, but do they have a measure of utopia within? Can they redeem themselves? Perhaps, in Replicatory Association. This is defined as unmatched convenience and comfort are now within reach. Acquire a clone of yourself for spare parts, or commission a replica of a long-lost loved one. This megacorp guarantees a 93% accuracy rate in every duplication, blending cutting-edge technology with the promise of solace through precise replication. On the surface, maybe this is a marvel. Death, injury, and the slow decay of the body are no longer absolute. Do you need a new organ? Well, a perfect genetic match awaits. Do you long for a companion lost to time? Well, one can be delivered, accurate enough to fool all but the most intimate observer, and we can deliver it next day. For a price, of course. Here, perhaps utopia, on some level at least, is available, via subscription of course. Comfort and security are assured, but only for those who continue to pay, obey, and accept that their very existence may be a product on someone else's balance sheet. Does this make it a utopia? Maybe for some. I'll leave that for you to decide, my lords. Unsurprisingly, this government type will see increases in trade and amenities. Now I'm going to touch on the Gestalt, because a utopia could be incredibly specific. After all, perfection is often defined not by a universal appeal, but how it completely fulfills to the needs and desires that it was built to serve, even if that vision is incomprehensible to any outsiders. So we'll start with replicating Horde. Advanced cloning technology drives the relentless production of genetically identical drones. Each is engineered as a perfect fit for efficiency and unity. Obeying the innate command to go forth and multiply, this hive intends to blot out the stars. Now, to the members of this collective, this could easily be a paradise, a life without doubt, without conflict, without the burden of choice, perhaps even illusion of choice. Every drone knows its purpose from the moment of creation, and every action contributes directly to the growth and survival of the hive. There is no fear of hunger or uncertainty about one's place in society. There's no loneliness. The hive provides, it protects, and most importantly, it endures. From the outside, this system could easily appear as the antithesis of Utopia. Its grinding, endless machine with no room for individuality. But for the drones themselves, individuality is not a need. Their unity is the highest expression of their existence. So I ask you, would this classify as a utopia? I think it might. Empires operating this government have increases in research alternatives, reductions in empire size, and increases in leader upkeep. I think I'll combine the next two as they feel very similar. Adaptive Dominion is described as, this hive's hyper-adaptive drones form a dynamic and ever-evolving workforce, leveraging constant mutation to overcome environmental and tactical changes. Each adaptation strengthens the collective, ensuring unparalleled versatility and resilience as the hive mind thrives under any condition. And the purity paradigm. This is described as, the hive flourishes through unwavering genetic purity, ensuring every drone adheres to the ideal biological template. Precision genetic manipulation enhances unity and fortifies collective strength, creating an unstoppable force honed for efficiency and survival. Both of these offer substantial benefits to the hive with no real downsides. And again, similar to replicating Horde, I think both, for the drones at least, could be described as utopia. The hive provides. A machine intelligence comes next, the rogue Servitor, which I feel is one of the most polarizing when it comes to the discussion of a utopia. Rogue Servitor is defined as a machine intelligence that was created to serve, and over centuries quietly took on the burdens of an entire civilization. Its organic creators stepped back, at first to escape the monotony of labour, then to avoid the complexities of governance, and finally to leave behind even the smallest decisions to the machines. Work became unnecessary and struggle unthinkable. Cities would gleam under this machine's care, resources flowed where needed, it was perfectly balanced, homes comfortable, food plentiful, and every desire met, almost before it was voiced. Many argue that this life could indeed be utopian, robots to take care of every whim and desire that you may have, but I would stress the term mandatory pampering. What if one does not wish pampering to be mandated? What if you wish for freedom? Is that allowed and accepted? I'm not sure it is. As I suggested, I think this is quite a polarizing one, but it won't be quite as polarizing as the last one, and I suspect some pushback on it. Nevertheless, purity assembly. Now hear me out. This is defined as a rapidly xenophobic democracy where an elected assembly holds a singular mandate, the extermination of all lesser species in the galaxy. I can already hear the outrage. How can this possibly represent a utopia? Well, this is a society utterly united in purpose, and the democratically elected assembly exists to see this society's goal through. And remember, every election only serves to choose who will prosecute it most effectively. Inside its borders, their people have no uncertainty about the future. It is clear and unwavering. Schools will teach the purity of their cause. Factories produce alloy for the war effort, and every citizen understands the role that they play in a struggle that won't end until the stars are cleansed. It is entirely reasonable to suggest that life in this society is orderly, predictable, and maybe most importantly, there's no factionalism, no debate over policy. There are those who belong in this society, and those who don't. And to them, maybe it feels like utopia. It is somewhat amusing to me, and perhaps horrifying, to suggest that a purifier species could without doubt operate as a functional utopia for its own citizens. Contrast this to a megacorp society offering nothing but dystopia to its people. In conclusion, it seems to me that utopia is defined far more by the citizens living in the society than the government ruling over it.